Hi everyone, this is Isaiah Broussard.
And I'm Stephen Patrick Kelly.
And welcome back to another episode of The Single Issue. Today we have a video of Stephen here drawing a page of his comic book, Shane Longshadow is Hungry. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Oh, well, Shane Longshadow is Hungry is, it's basically a revenge tale, that takes place in Ireland. And you're basically following the story of a young man known as Shane Longshadow and his brother Colin and Colin's wife, Tara Longshadow. And they're on a quest to avenge their father, who was killed by the town's mayor, Colm Shaughnessy. Basically, it's just a culmination of, a lot of, things that I love, just basically every single kung fu movie you've ever seen, or, old school video games, or just, rock music also had a role to play in this and everything. So, the funny thing about it is that Shane was basically just accidentally created because I was sitting with a friend one day at Booker T's wrestling school, of all places. And, I joked with him. We had a weird sense of humor. I joked with him. I told him one day I'm going to write a movie about a fighter, and it's going to be called Hungry. The guy is going to look all beat up and everything else or whatever, but it's going to look like he won that fight. And we laughed and everything else. But on the way home, I realized I couldn't get the idea out of my head. So I was just like, okay, so let's say I go somewhere with this. What's the premise? What's the guy's name and everything else, And I was just like, okay, well, I love Ireland. So, or at least I love the idea of Ireland. I've never been to Ireland, but I'd love to go someday. And I have 3 Irish names.
Here we have interesting shots of Stephen's arm.
Yeah. Look at me hold those 3 pins.
I'm gonna bust your balls a little bit and let's talk about tools. Let's talk about the paper that you use.
All right.
So Stephen, last episode you remember I mentioned that there's no shame in using whatever tools that you have at hand.
Uh-huh.
And
here we go.
Yeah, I'm gonna bust Stephen's balls here a bit. Because even though I say that, I think you should be using better paper.
Yeah. Well, what Isaiah is referring to is the fact that, what you're watching me do right now is ink a copy of the original drawing, because I don't ink the originals. And the reason why I don't ink the originals is for the same reason that probably another person wouldn't ink the originals. Because if you screw up, you want it to not be on the original.
Well, I think there are some other reasons besides that to not ink your originals. I'm not too worried about screwing up on my inks whenever I do anything traditionally. But when I do have comic pages, I don't want to have to worry about cleaning up a lot of the pencil strokes. And sometimes when you erase on top of that, you lose the intensity of the black of the ink. And so when I drew something like Fight School High School, I did that mostly traditionally. And when I inked that, I went ahead and printed out my pencils as blue lines just to make things far, far cleaner and easier. That way I didn't have to struggle so much about erasing and having eraser flakes all over my drafting table. And when you plop it into Photoshop, you just do a nice little levels adjustment and all of the blue lines disappear and you just have your nice high fidelity ink So there's more than one reason. Even if you're not worried about messing things up, because I honestly don't think that inks are as
the other
permanent as people are scary because of the permanence that people believe sometimes.
Well, the other thing that I want to add too is the other reason why I ink a copy as opposed to like the original, which everyone can see the original on the right side of me of the copy. The other reason is like, artists meet each other all the time, and you might run into that one artist that's just like, hey, do you want me to ink your stuff? I'd like to try my hand at inking your stuff or whatever, So you want to make a copy of the original, because, it could be 2 inkers. It could be 3 inkers that want to try their hand at your stuff. So, you make copies for them as opposed to, like, just giving them the original so that they can, do what they want at their leisure and you still have your original. So, that's another reason why I ink a copy.
Well, actually, we have, as you can see there in the shot, the page right next to Steven there is actually his original pencils. Can you tell us why you have that there? Is it for reference? Is it for...
Yeah, it's for reference because the copy paper that you're looking at right now, that you're watching me ink, it doesn't... like I mentioned in the last episode, I go to FedEx. And unfortunately, since I'm not the only one that uses the machine, the black toner is low in most cases. And as a result, when I make a copy of a picture, it doesn't catch all the detail that I, put on the original drawing. So I've got to do a mixture of recreating what I put on the original, all at the same time, adding something that maybe like I missed or whatever, So yeah, that's what I do.
You did those really cool speed lines without a ruler. I'm very impressed.
Well, it's funny because I used to do it with a ruler, but working with a ruler when you're doing speed lines is just freaking
pain a bit.
Yeah, it's like tedious and it takes a long time. So eventually I was just like, screw it, I'm just gonna do this myself. And it only took a couple of times, but you practice it enough, and you basically just have it down immediately. It's funny because before I started, really, working on Shane, I never really did speed lines, of this kind of caliber at all, But when I created Shane, I, told myself I was going to do it differently from all the other stuff that I had done before, and I wanted the speed lines to be a huge element in it. Also, I had someone ask me when I was inking, what is that on Shane's shirt, the symbol that you see on his shirt, and it's really just a side shot of the symbol of my father's character, the Cosmic Tiger. Eventually, I'll color it in with spot blacks that I learned from somebody. That term from somebody. I'm not going to say it.
Someone's name is Isaiah.
What? His name is Isaiah too? I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I'm eventually going to color that in. But yeah, basically the symbol on Shane's shirt, for them, in his universe, the Cosmic Tiger is basically like their source of inspiration and everything else. And blah. And, and Shane has it on a shirt. It's one of his favorite shirts. So, it just seemed kind of fitting to, put it on him during this fight, because the page that you're looking at right now is one of the pages from the final fight of Volume 1 of Shane Long Shadows Hungry. So he's wearing that shirt for at least 40 pages in the book. That's to make sure that everyone, knows that, my dad draws too. So, and he has his own characters.
Got to plug in that nepotism, man.
Yeah, I got to do that. So, yeah.
I'm going to ask you a very loaded question.
Okay, here we go.
How do you classify your style?
You know, I'd be lying if I didn't say it wasn't somewhat manga influenced. I wouldn't call myself a manga artist. You know, I don't think I can do that. But if I hadn't, you know, read, you know, like manga, my style probably wouldn't be what it is right now. You know, before Shane, I drew like, you know, traditionally superhero, you know, comics and whatnot. But you know, when I started like reading, you know, like really, really detailed manga by like artists like, you know, Kentaro Miura, you know, I was just like, okay, well, this is what I want for Shane. I also kind of sort of, you know, delved into old school. I used to read like the old Conan books back in the day, you know, done by John Buscema. I never learned how to pronounce his name. Bushima. Anyway, his dirty style, you know, I kind of sort of, you know, implemented that into, you know, Shane as well. So you've got a mixture of that. So I guess, I don't know, my style is like a fusion of, you know, American and manga. I don't know. I mean,
I bring up styles because I don't like classifying styles.
Right.
I don't like. I don't like coming up with a name for something that I do, and I think a lot of people get really fixated on like, this is what comics should look like, and this is what manga should look like.
Right.
But to me, it's like, well, they're all comics, and you know, we're all doing sequential art here, and a thing that I see with a lot of young artists, especially those who are trying to learn and they're buying the books that are like how to draw comics and how to draw manga and stuff like that. They get very fixated on these very concrete definitions of a style. And even if you look at something like comic books, and I'm going to say in the cape sense, so like superhero comic books, there's not a single defining style for that.
Right.
You'll find various artists that draw in various ways, and the same thing with manga. You pick up a how to draw anime or how to draw manga book, and they'll tell you eyes have to be this big and noses have to be that big. But if you check out your favorite manga artists, most of them are vastly different from that.
They're playing by their own rules.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I asked that very loaded question because, especially since we have this video displaying Steven's style here, after we've already seen my style of art, and even then we saw what I do for Transiltown, like the way that I draw Fight School High School, which I hope to start sharing here more, is there's a different mindset to how I go about that. And the same thing when I was working on Help Wanted compared to what I do for Transiltown. And it's very subtle because I have my own quirks and kinks as an artist. But I don't think anyone should be really fixated on what to call their style or namings of styles in general. Actually, I think that's a privilege that belongs to the fans. You guys can decide what to call my art. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people have different influences from different areas.
Right.
You know, I have a lot of Eastern influences. I have a lot of Western influences, and I think I pull on them equally in my work.
And more on that point, you know, it's just like, as artists, we change every day, you know, and I found that out pretty quickly because, you know, before I started, you know, Shane, you know, I was doing like a fan fiction for Street Fighter, you know, well, something that I completely and totally written, but eventually, you know, when Shane popped in my head, you know, I knew that I had to like do something different. And when I first saw Kentaro Miura's artwork in Berserk, I was just like, good God. You know, it's just like, and yeah, I started from issue 1 and and I eventually got to issue 22 and, you know, just watching this man grow and everything else, I was just blown away, and I knew I could not read this manga and then drag my sorry behind to this, you know, this thing I was trying to do and like do any less than this, because I wanted, you know, if I was going to do this, I wanted people to remember it. I wanted people to like open the book up and be like, oh, so he's not messing around here. It's just like, he's serious, So, yeah, but if it wasn't for that, it's just like...
I want to ask you something very, very specific here about what's going on the screen. I noticed that you crosshatched
right.
In that area, and as we've watched you here, a lot of what you're doing is just hatching. You're not doing any cross-hatching at all. So I just want to pick your brain for a second and ask why you decided to cross-hatch in that specific area.
Oh, that's... The person that he's, showing his heel to is his opponent, Timothy Maroney, who's one of the Scions of Shaughnessy. And what I just cross-hatched over there is his bandana. I just have a little cross-hatching scheme on his bandana.
Okay.
So every time you see him and the bandana, it's got a cross-hatching. I don't know. I don't know why I specifically cross-hatched on his bandana.
So it's a pattern.
It's just a pattern, basically. So, yeah. This is actually one of the most tedious parts, coloring in, the blacks. Because I use, like, for the most part, if it's, like, a huge spot of black, I use a brush, a brush pen. But if it's like very, very small things, I use like, just the typical, pen. But I have to be careful when I'm coloring because I don't want to color outside the lines, because everything is so fine and everything else. So, and one of the things, we already saw it happen, but one of the things I enjoy a lot, and which is actually the most tedious part of the whole entire process, is that whenever I draw or ink, one of my favorite things to do are the eyelashes. I love, inking the eyelashes on, a character. It kind of adds a hint of realism to me because in a typical comic book, most of the time you don't even see eyelashes on a character, for the most part. Not unless they do an extreme close-up. If you're like looking at John Romita's artwork or Ed McGuinness or whatever.
And we see them all the time in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Look, we're just here to have a good time here, But yeah, you don't even see that. But Kentaro Miura did freaking eyelashes, and it's like, I want to do eyelashes. I want to do that. I want everyone to see that these people have eyelashes, just like a real, character. A real person. Granted, my proportions aren't exactly the most realistic and everything else.
It's a detail that you like to draw.
Yeah, so, I also do the same thing with the eyebrows, too. The eyebrows, look like actual eyebrows that go in a certain direction, So, yeah. And down here...
I think we're looking at a man's butt here.
Yeah, he's falling on his ass right now. And this is actually where it gets really interesting because I have to, ink the parts where the dust rising into the air when he falls. It's coming just a sec. See that white pen that I'm holding? That's like the brush
Your
pen
brush
that
pen?
I have to use for it.
You were a bold man holding all those pens that close to your paper.
Well, I don't want to have to keep constantly reaching to the side to get it because that's tiring.
I'd be very afraid of accidentally marking up my page, and you don't have any caps on any of those pens. There's all hanging loose, man.
Yep. There we are. That's what it gives me such a thrill to do this, to do that right there, because it almost just looks like, I don't know, it looks like a watercolor type thing. I don't know. You understand?
Yeah.
So
you might want to explain it to the audience a little bit.
Well, basically, maybe kind of like Japanese calligraphy, or Japanese watercolor, that kind of thing. That's when I just brush it like that.
This is where I'm gonna mess with you about tools again.
Okay.
Another thing that you guys can do if you like working with brushes is if you use an actual brush instead of a pen brush, you can actually go for some dry brush techniques where you don't load as much ink on your brush, or you intentionally let it be a little dry, and then you get this really neat texture. And that's a really fun part about traditional inks, is that you have so many tools to bring out so many different methods of texture, and play around with other tools, man.
Well, I mean, like, back in the day, I used to use India ink, and I had my heart broken so many times or whatever. And that was back during the days that I inked my originals, so I really had my heart broken, because whenever I draw hard. Like, it creates crevices into the paper. So whenever I would ink over it with India ink, it would spread. And
so that's not giving you any issues with that paper that you're getting from the printer then, because that's very, very, very lightweight paper.
Yeah, it is, but like India ink would probably eat through that like we would through pizza. It's that thin. It's like toilet paper.
That's why you're sticking to those microns that you use.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. Well, that's all we got time for this week, and we'll check you guys out next time.
Bye, guys.